Hello and welcome back to another episode of World Traveler Cooking. Today I'm going to try my hand at traditional British bangers. These are sausages often served with mashed potatoes in a pairing called bangers and mash. But they can be served in other ways too. They're sort of a staple of British cuisine. I'm also going to take some of the excess of the sausage filling, and I will use it for Scotch eggs for another video. So that's sort of the background. If you're familiar with British pub fare, you know what these are. So we're going to make them at home. I can't get good bangers here. So our ingredients are, we have about 2 kilograms or about 4.5 pounds of pork, shoulder mostly. I'm going to set this in this has just come out of the refrigerator. I'm going to set it in the freezer now to just partially freeze just a little bit while I work. I have 0.5 kilogram or 1 pound of pork fat. This just came out of the freezer, so I'm going to let it thaw. I'm going to make some breadcrumbs out of this bread. And then I have seasonings, which are salt. I don't think we need pepper, but I'll double check. Onion powder, ginger powder. I will grate some nutmeg, and we will have fresh sage. You can use, you might be able to use dried sage, but everything I've seen says use fresh, so we'll take this and we'll finally cut it. So our first step is we're going to put this in the freezer to freeze, and we're going to toast this twice in the oven to make sure it's really dry and just a bit toasted so we can make our breadcrumbs. So we get started with that. In the meantime, my sausage casings are soaking, and I will run water through the sausage casing a few times to reduce the amount of salt. At any rate, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm just going to take all my bread, I'm going to lay it out on an oven tray like this, and I will run both the bottom element and the broiler and toast it. Then I will let it cool down and I will toast it again. I'm not going to let it get too brown on the first toasting, just let it start to toast a bit, and then on the second toasting we'll toast it more. So after the first one, they are getting dry, they're kind of lightly toasted, and they're starting to turn a little brown in certain places, but not very. I am going to flip them over, and I'm going to let them sit out here for like 5 or 6 minutes and cool down and let the water equalize. Then we'll put these back in and we'll let them toast again, probably another 5 minutes, and then they should get nice and dry for the breadcrumb process. And after the second toasting, this bread is pretty dry all the way through, and some of it's somewhat brown. So I'm going to let this cool for another 5 minutes, and then we will run it through the food processor to make our breadcrumbs, and then then I will go ahead and get the crushed ice ready. Bread goes into my food processor here, and it's okay if I squish it a little bit, it should be at least. So just make sure the lid goes on. Take me a moment. We have it on, inverted, that wasn't great. I think the issue is this. There we go. I'll be back after I grind this. So you can make this as as coarse or as fine as you like. Oftentimes, if some of it's not quite toasted enough, it won't quite grind. So we'll just take some of these larger pieces out. And we only need about a cup of this anyway. The rest we can use for Scotch eggs if we like. So there we go. And it's fine if it's not fully dry, if it's just a little bit still moist. So I'll set this aside in a bowl and we'll come back to crush our ice. Alright, we have our crushed ice. This will go into another bowl, and I'm going to put it back in the freezer while I get to work on cutting the we get to work on cutting the pork. For this next part, we have to work really quickly because temperature control is important. So I've taken my fat and my pork and my ice, and I'm just going to stir it up. It would work better if it wasn't with my hand for temperature reasons, but do what we have to do. And I'm just going to lightly stir it up here. That's cold. I don't like it being cold on my hands because that also means I'm imparting heat here. So I think that's good. Now I'm going to move this into some other dishes, and I'm going to grate back into this cold frozen container. So from here, I'm just going to take some of the mixture, and I'm putting it through the medium die. Hold on a second. Yeah, that looks right. Okay, I'm going to put this through the medium die. And this first batch will have more fat in it. That's okay. It doesn't really matter. I'll just push it down a bit with the plunger. Not hard. We're not forcing it down. The important thing here is that temperature control is really important. So we're going to keep everything in the freezer when we're not working with it. And this will take a while. I'll be back when I'm done the first grind. So you want to make sure that you have distinct fat specks. If you didn't, then you're simply too warm. So I'm going to throw this back in the freezer, and at the same time, I'm going to freeze my other containers. In fact, maybe I'll put it in the other containers and put it back in the freezer along with this bowl, and then let that sit for half an hour while I start preparing some other things. So it's been half an hour. The stand mixer has cooled down a bit. I am going to go ahead and start it up, and we will grind this through the smaller die now. So we've gone through a medium die, and now it's going to be a small die. So I'm going to start by just putting some of this in here before I even turn it on. And we'll go ahead and turn it on. And from here, we'll just run this through. This shouldn't take very long, and then I will be back. So here's the pork after the second grinding. You can still see distinct fat specks, which is exactly what we want. Next I'll show you the spices, and then we'll start getting all this together. First, let me quickly clean my meat grinder. So for our seasonings, we have 2 tablespoons of salt. You can do 2.5, but that very much depends on your meat. We have 2.5 tablespoons of white pepper. We have 1.5 tablespoons of freshly chopped sage. We have 1.5 teaspoons to 2 teaspoons of ginger. Same amount of onion powder. One of those is ginger, one is onion powder. And I have about 1 teaspoon of freshly grated nutmeg. If you're using not fresh nutmeg, definitely go with at least 2 teaspoons and maybe some mace as well. So I'm going to add these to my meat mixture, and I'm going to be back out with ice water. I have 2 to 2.5 cups of ice water I expect to use. That depends on other things, but I think I forgot to cover it in the intro. In goes around 1 cup of these breadcrumbs, and I'm going to start with about significant part of this water here. And then let's go ahead and lift this up. And boom. Appear not to have gotten that on the hook. Let me fix it. First time I've made that specific mistake. I guess I probably should have unplugged it while doing that. Safety first. So now I'm just going to go ahead and turn this on, and we will let it we will let it go until I can get a nice smooth sausage mixture. So I have put about 3 meters of sausage casing here. I could do more if I wanted to use all of this, but I'm going to save some of the inside for Scotch eggs, which will be the next video. And yeah, so we're ready to thread. Ready to stuff the sausage. So I have my sausage stuffer going up. And here we go. I'm going to start by kind of priming this with just a little bit. And then, see, we're getting a lot of air from this, but I think we can manage that. Okay, we're now ready to start stuffing in earnest. So, I'm just going to put this in. Gentle pressure. And you will get air bubbles sometimes. We will poke those. Ideally you want to use like a thin needle or something like that. So I'll just keep stuffing these and I'll be back when I'm done. Now to separate the links, what I'm actually doing as I go is I pinch this off for a bit, and then I rotate this a little bit, and then I spin the bowl. And I always do it the same way, just so that I don't cause the other ones to undo. And I'll just keep doing this. I'm probably 2/3 of the way done, so I'll just keep up. And I'll be back in not too long. So for the taste test, I'm just gonna parboil 4 of these now. I can eat them for the rest of the day, but for a larger, for most of these, I'm going to let them sit overnight before I parboil them, just because that'll let the flavors better blend. But for the taste test, I'm not going to worry about that. So we're parboiling these. We're just sort of poaching these. They're going to set in hot water to slowly cook. We don't want it to boil, and we don't want them to break the sausage casing. So we're just going to let these go like this, and then we will grill or fry them after that. And now for the taste test. Now this probably should be broiled until it's starting to brown a little more, but it should be cooked all the way through. So for a taste test, this should work. It's really good. That's really good. So, the flavor reminds me kind of like a bratwurst, but instead of the coriander, you have all this flavor of sage. It's really, really very nice. Just a tad of spiciness to it from the pepper. You know, I actually like these more than I like bratwurst. They're very, very good. Highly recommend you try them yourself. Now, if you find this content interesting, you'd like to see more of it, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have anything to say about this dish, please discuss it in the comments. I love to get feedback. I think we're all better cooks when we share our techniques. So, if you make a dish like this, you do it a little differently, love to hear how. At any rate, recipes in the description. Bon appetit, and see you next week.